Hello, hello. Greetings, everybody. We're so happy you guys took the time out of your busy schedules and your busy day to join us for this special podcast where we're looking to push and encourage you to ask questions, go deeper in your curiosity about Haitian history, and for you to take pride in your heritage, and again to specifically spark a deeper curiosity to explore and understand our rich history. And today we've got a special treat for you as we will be going into a special discussion on this episode of the podcast about Haitian history. And so before we meet our special guest of honor, I'm going to bring in our very own, our Director of Youth Ministries here in Youth and Young Adult Ministries here in the Northeastern Conference, and our Beta President. I'm going to bring her to the stage here, Dr. Paula Olivier, and then we'll bring our special guest on for you. And for those that don't know, I'm Brother Jonathan Coicou. I also serve here helping in the non-uniform branch of Youth Ministries, but also work and teach social studies and history in the New York City public school system, and work as a department chair, and really take pride in sharing all history, but especially history of the diaspora, and even more specifically, Haitian history. So I'm going to bring on our leader, Dr. Paula Olivier, to the stage. Welcome, Dr. Olivier.
Hey, Jonathan, JC, my coordinator. It's great to see you. I'm really excited to be here. And would rather do this with no one else, because I mean, you are our resident Haitian historian. Whenever something pops off about Haiti, people kind of look forward to your input. We're all online waiting to see what Jonathan has to say. And so I'm really glad that you're able to facilitate this encounter for us. And I just can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited. And if you could just real quick, before we bring on our special guest, just let us know, like I said, you work in the Northeastern Conference Youth Ministries and Beta. Just real briefly, if you could just let us know what that encompasses real briefly, so we know who we're connecting with, who we're sharing this with, where this message will reach, and where it will go to. So just real quick, and then we'll bring up our special guest.
All right, no problem. I currently serve as the Youth and Young Adult Ministries Director for the Northeastern Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. And we cover 7 states in the Northeast area. I could enumerate them, but I'm afraid I'm going to leave one out. So you can list them, for us.
No worries.
And then in addition to that, I also serve as president of Beta, the Black Adventist Youth Directors Association, representing the Youth and Young Adult Ministries of the 9 regional conferences and sister conferences across the North American division. We have a constituency of about 30,000 youth and young adults in Northeastern, so you can expand that for North American division. So we do our best to serve that population, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to serve for our young people to get to know God and Christ in a new way. And I believe in holistic ministry, and in that is educating us. We have a Franco-Haitian Federation as well, and we have Franco-Haitian federations across the country. And I think this is an aspect that we can promote and help them appreciate our culture. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. This is very exciting, and we're grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much. And so without any further ado, we're going to bring our special guest to the stage. We'll give her a chance to introduce herself. And so we're going to bring to the stage Dr. Marlene Daut, coming from Yale University. Welcome, Dr. Daut.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Again, it's a pleasure to have you here. And so we're just going to start up and break the ice a little bit and give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and to give us a little bit of context. And so to set the stage for this conversation. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired your work in Haitian history?
Okay, so I'm Haitian American. My mother was born in Port-au-Prince. I grew up in California, however, so very far from the Haitian diaspora. But my joke is always that I felt like I knew every Haitian in California because my great aunt had 7 children. And so they all had children. So you can imagine, so we're just proliferating on our own there in Southern California. let's see, I teach in the French department and in the Black Studies department at Yale University. And what inspired me was learning the story of the Haitian Revolution, which might sound strange because I just mentioned I'm Haitian American, but I encountered Toussaint, Dessalines, etc., as very abstract, long ago figures. And when I was in graduate school and I began to really learn the story of the Haitian Revolution, which I came to through literature, I was doing my doctorate in literature. I just wanted to know more of the history of these events that so fascinated basically every Black writer from the early 20th century and continuing on today. Our most famous and celebrated Black authors like Langston Hughes, Aimé Césaire, C.L.R. James, they were all writing about the Haitian Revolution. Derek Walcott, I mean, literally almost all of them. And if they found such importance and inspiration in this event, then we should all as well, is how I came to it.
Wow. I mean, that's a rich answer. Can we stay right there and just piggyback right off of that real quick? We're just going to piggyback right off of that. So now you sort of led us into that, but even more specifically from your perspective now, and the fact that you were in California, although you knew pretty much almost all the Haitians in California, but away from perhaps a large Haitian enclave, why is it important for you, do you think, for Haitian Americans, especially young people, to know their history?
Oh my goodness, for so many reasons. First, the story of the Haitian Revolution is the story of how the world went from slavery to freedom. Wow. The Haitian Revolution is the event that changed people's ideas en masse about slavery. Before the Haitian Revolution, people were almost uniformly justifying slavery. Even those who were against the slave trade, which has to be decoupled from slavery on the ground, they were against the importation, the forced importation of Africans to the Americas for the purposes of slavery, but many of them were not necessarily against slavery. And when the Haitian Revolution came along and Haitians declared independence in 1804, this actually caused a problem for all the people who kept saying, we can't abolish slavery. It's not possible. With all their myriad excuses, the Haitian Revolution showed that you could, because over and over again, all of Haiti's first leaders, even as they wrote new constitutions, changed Haiti from a republic or from a state to a republic to an empire to a kingdom, all the different iterations, every constitution said slavery is abolished and cannot exist in this land. Even under Toussaint Louverture, when it was still a colony, his constitution in 1801 says there can't be slavery. And the world needs to know this, because part of Haiti's maligned position in the world is the fact that Haiti has been painted as a place that takes and needs instead of the place that gave, that bestowed this gift of freedom on us all.
Wow, that was rich. We just got to pause for a second because that was rich. That was rich and so necessary. Those watching from wherever you're watching, as you watch right now, just think about what we just heard for a second. Yeah, especially what they're saying. They act like Haiti's saying Haiti's taking, but you gave. Yeah, so yeah, definitely. Yeah, can we hear more? Definitely, can we hear more about that? And after that, we'll transition to really starting to go down the timeline of this massive revolution.
Yeah, so under all of Haiti's first leaders, Dessalines, Pétion, Christophe, Boyer, they are disrupting the ongoing slave trade. In some cases, the illicit, illegal slave trade in under flags where it had been abolished, and outright, the Portuguese and the Spanish who are still keeping up their trade. And sometimes those world powers would retaliate. They would say, okay, well, we're going to confiscate Haitian ships, or we're going to raid Haitian beaches and pull people off the shores. And it's really astonishing to watch as Christophe also, goes to head with the governor of Jamaica or the governor of Cuba and says, no, you must return all of these Haitian citizens whom you've captured, and you must bring them back. But the other thing that these rulers of Haiti were doing is they themselves were capturing slave ships, confiscating them, and setting the people free in Haiti to live as citizens of Haiti. And we see evidence of it all over the kingdom, which is the part I know best, whose actions in this regard I know best. But also, Boyer did this as well. Pétion did this as well, because their commitment to freedom was sincere, and it was for everyone. And watching as how Pétion tried to help South Americans get free. He's the one who told Simón Bolívar, yes, I, applaud your desire for independence from Spain, but the condition is, if you want my assistance, you have to abolish slavery. And when Bolívar didn't do it at first, Pétion reminded him of his obligation and forced him to make good on it. And then we see how many slave revolts and rebellions in the United States were actually inspired by the Haitian Revolution and knowledge of Haitian independence. It gave the world hope. People talk so much about fear. They said everyone was afraid of the Haitian. No, not everyone was afraid of the Haitian Revolution. Enslavers, plantation owners, colonists, heads of state like Napoleon who want to make a lot of money, they are afraid. But enslaved people who vastly outnumber all across the world, enslavers, vastly outnumber them. They took inspiration. They weren't afraid of the Haitian Revolution. They were inspired. So it's safe to say that from a numbers perspective, the Haitian Revolution did not scare nearly as many people as it inspired. And that's what people to remember, is not to think of these events as this terrible time in history. Yes, they had to use their brawn to get what they wanted, but that showed other enslaved people that it was possible, that all the things the enslavers had told them, this is the natural state for you, it's inalienable, you cannot ever be free of slavery. If your mother was born into slavery, it was not true. And the Haitian Revolution and Haiti were the proof.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
I mean, that was absolutely another rich response, because I think the domino effect, like you said, it's way more than people realize. When we think about at the time, we think Bolivar, with Gran Colombia, with Ecuador, Venezuela, and Colombia, the impact, it goes beyond, because you're right. Like, I didn't know that was the ultimatum. Like, hey, if you want this help, you've got to get rid of slavery. Because it was a little layered, because you have different mestizos and you had a very complex social caste system in South America as well. But you're right. If you think about the domino effect, those three nations today, there are portions of their flags that look like the Haitian flag to this day, the blue and red portion. And then you have Bolivia and these other countries that get independence. You're right. I think, to just slightly piggyback on what you said, it inspired, like you said, way more people. But I think there are a number of people who may not even realize where that inspiration come from. If they were to trace the roots of the inspiration, they might say it's Simón Bolívar, but you got to go beyond him back to Haiti. Wow. And that impacted the whole continent, South America.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so that we can flow into our next question. This is great. So we're taking the next step forward. This is amazing. And so if you can just tell us about, we're sort of going to kill two birds with one stone with this one. If you can tell us about the meetings of August 1791 that sparked the Haitian Revolution, the key leaders who were present. And then it's often said that Haiti defeated the French to gain its independence. But were there other nations that Haitian freedom fighters had to confront on their journey to liberation? I know it's a lot, but we can run it, we can rewind a little bit, but if we can sort of kill two birds with one stone with that, what do you say?
Yes, so you're correct. In the middle of August 1791, what we like to think of as kind of representatives of various plantations gathered together at a spot called Montrouge in northern Haiti. And these are people who had a little bit more ability to travel around. They'd been given some responsibility on the plantations where they were, so they could leave, and they plot and they clandestinely decide that they're going to engage in revolution. They say things like, we outnumber them, which was true. there were nearly 400,000, if not more, enslaved Africans on the island, and 30,000 white colonists, like 25 to 30,000 free people of color, some of whom also enslaved people were colonists of their own stripe. And they say, we can do this. And within 10 days, the freedom fighters is what I like to call them, because the French called them insurgents and rebels, and all of these terms were meant to discredit what they were doing, which was fighting for freedom. They have burned the entire northern plain, and they were led by a man named Boukman Dutty, sometimes called Dutty Boukman. I think he went by both terms. Another formerly enslaved man, because they did free themselves, Jean-François Biassou, and Toussaint Louverture is there, but in a less sort of dominant role than the one he would come to take on later. And, you know, the French responded to this, as you might exactly expect they would, with military might. But two other world powers also responded to this. Spain, which was occupying the eastern 2/3 of the island, today the Dominican Republic. They called it Santo Domingo in the era. And then the British, they have been in the back and forth war with France for centuries. And so they see this as an opportunity, first, to make sure that slavery is preserved, and second, to take away one of France's most prized and profitable possessions. And so the Haitian revolutionaries will have to fight France, Spain, and Great Britain. And, you know, Toussaint Louverture has this great phrase that he says later in the process of the revolution, once he's forced to the end of slavery, once the whole island has come under French rule. And he says, you know, I've had to go to war with 3 countries, and I've defeated all 3. And if I have to, I'll do it again.
Wow.
And of course, he doesn't get the opportunity, but his life is an inspiration for the later freedom fighters, the founders of Haiti, because they talk about him and they know that they cannot remain French anymore because the French have tricked Louverture, deported him, arrested him, killed him essentially in France. That's where they get the true inspiration, not just for ending slavery, but for independence.
Wow. I mean, before I just want to touch on something that you mentioned, Dr. Olivier, anything that stands out to you that really is just tugging at you right now?
Like, there's so much tugging at me. I'm just kind of absorbing it. All these stories and references in my mind. You know, when I am in a setting, like at a church setting, an afternoon program we call AY, and I'll do a seminar on Haitian history, I would do it in a way that kids can relate to, right? So I'll have 2 people. I'll have 2 kids come up on one side, and I'll have 4 come up on the other side. I said, okay, to the 2, you fight and you win. Yay, we're all excited. To the 4, I said, now you fight the 3, and then you win. I said, now which one is most impressive? And they're like, of course, the one that defeated 3. And that's when I can segue and say, you know, that is Haitian history. You often hear about the Haitian Revolution with one primary opponent, but Haiti had to defeat 3 world powers in order to gain their independence. And I appreciate the fact that the way that the early revolutionaries conducted themselves is that they knew how to navigate that complicated circle. So if they could align themselves with one against the other, they would do that, and then realign themselves with another against the other and do that. So it was extremely impressive for me. Not only were they able to defeat 3, but they were actually able to kind of use one against the other, you know, in the process. And that's why it was kind of coming to mind.
Yeah, I mean, that's rich. Yeah, I to piggyback on both of what you said, and I never thought about that. That's an amazing object lesson. Simple, but they can't miss that. That'd be 3 major powers. I remember last summer I went to France, and I went to high in eastern France towards the border of Switzerland in the Jura Mountains to Fort des Jours, or some people call it Château des Jours, where Toussaint Louverture was imprisoned the last moments of his life. So when I get there, I mean, it's a sobering moment. It's high up there. And I was looking, I forgot the name of the port in Western France where he was brought to. And he was brought, you know, I'm looking at the distance. We drove from Paris there, and it took us about 6 hours. I couldn't imagine how long it took him to get from the coast of coast.
Yeah.
Say it again?
Bordeaux.
Yes, thank you. And to get there to travel from there all the way to East, I mean, we were about 12 to 15 minutes from the border of Switzerland by car.
Yeah.
Anyway, to make a long story short, we wondered why was he put in this location? And the tour guide there said they were so scared of this one man, this Haitian man. They were so scared of him. They wanted him to be as far from all major bodies of water as possible, far from the Atlantic Ocean to the west, far from the English Channel and all the other bodies of water, North Sea, whatever it was, north of France, and far from the Mediterranean, south of France. Obviously, you know, the east of France touches, you know, Switzerland, Germany, Italy, etc. So they said that was the fort, the location that was the most isolated and furthest from any type of access to a major body of water and sea. They were so scared of him. And I remember that he got outside and there were bricks covering his window. They were so scared of him that they even had bricks covering his window for the little sunlight he could get, because they were scared of him even having conversation with a guard or soldier assigned to him and convincing them and winning them over. And so this stuff it's suppressed information. But I said, wait a minute, like what they did was major. What they did was huge. And the threat was real. Just like you said, the threat was real. They may not say it in certain textbooks, but you're 100% correct. They were really threatened by this one man.
Yeah, in fact, Leclerc, so this is the man Napoleon sends with this huge expedition in 1802 to reinstate the slavery that Toussaint and the other freedom fighters have forced the French to abolish formally. But really, the freedom fighters abolished it for themselves, right? So he sends Leclerc, and once they succeed in arresting Toussaint Louverture, Leclerc writes a letter back home and says, I understand you think the job is done here because we got rid of Toussaint Louverture, but what you don't understand is I have 10,000 Louvertures to contend with.
Wow.
10,000 Louvertures.
Wow.
Amazing. If you could, like, if I was sitting in your class, right, and I know nothing about Haiti, but I desire to know about Haiti and the Haitian Revolution, could you give me like a little 30-second rundown of the key leaders of the revolution that I would need to be aware of and kind of chronicle that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say the post-Boukman phase, because Boukman, unfortunately, the French put a bounty on his head in the fall of 1791, and they pay about 5,000 to 6,000 in the colony's currency to this white colonist who brings his head, literally brings his head to them. That's how gruesome this period is. So following this period, we have Toussaint Louverture, who is going to rise to the ranks in the French army. Because one of the remarkable things about what he did was, his mastermind, is that he not only forced the French to have to formally abolish slavery, which they did with decree in 1794, but he's now forcing them essentially to put Black men in huge positions of responsibility where they start running the colony. And so he becomes governor general. He issues a constitution where he declares himself governor general for life with the right to choose his successor. It's actually amazing. And then you have Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who's the division general. And this is important because Toussaint Louverture is nominating each of these officers along the way, including his nephew, Charles Belair, his adopted nephew, Moise, Henri Christophe, who helps Toussaint Louverture to get rid of a key French agent. And as a reward, Louverture says, I'm going to promote you to brigadier general. And so these men are running this colony. And this is what really is behind France's fear at this point, is they are watching their grip of control slip away into the hands of Toussaint, Dessalines, Christophe, and all their letters talk about, we got to get rid of these guys. Moise, Belair, Maurepas, all these famous names that we hear in Haitian history. Those of us who are Haitian American, you know these names, even if you don't know what they did. And they were even afraid of Rigaud. They deported André Rigaud, Toussaint Louverture's main rival, very powerful as a division general in the southern part of the colony. They deport him. And in fact, later on, he is imprisoned in the same jail where Toussaint Louverture was imprisoned, the Fort de Joux, after Toussaint's death. uh,
did not
at the
know
end of
that.
April. And how he gets out, André Rigaud, is he writes a reconquest plan and sends it to Napoleon.
Wow.
Yes, he writes a reconquest plan, and then they let him out, but they surveil him for the rest of the time that he spends there in France and open all his letters. He has no freedom to leave. He goes to Bordeaux at one point, to Marseille at another point, but he has no freedom to just move around. He has to ask for permission. Their fear was that strong that he would go back to then independent Haiti and do something.
Wow.
Let me transition to something that's, not so great to talk about, but as I was reading your book, The First and Last King of Haiti, Henri Christophe, you said something that struck me. Like, when, Napoleon instituted genocide of the Haitian people, and got creative in ways of doing that, right? And empowering Leclerc and so forth. You talked about the first gas chambers, and I never heard that before. I think gas chambers, I think of, the Holocaust, but this is another Holocaust in a sense where, like, the bottom of the boats, they are experimenting on a type of gases to use to put people on in order to, to kill them. Tell us about the genocide and the intent, the purpose, why.
Yes, so it's pretty clear. Leclerc, he writes another letter back home, seeking authorization from Napoleon Bonaparte to use whatever means necessary, and Napoleon gives it to him. And Leclerc was pretty clear what he was going to do. So this is also with Napoleon's consent, because Leclerc said, we need to get rid of any person in the colony over the age of 12 who has ever worn an epaulette. So he wants to just create massive destruction. And to do this, he starts drowning people. He will have people in the cities, in the South in particular, rounded up, put on boats. And, some of these boats had a hold in the bottom that could open up. Like, if you wanted to dump something into the ocean, they would put people of color, Black Africans, the former free people of color, they put them down there and they opened it up and they drowned them all. And the remarkable thing about this is it's so disgusting and disturbing. French soldiers complained about it.
Wow.
And so in the book, I actually quote some of these French soldiers because, Haitians complaining about it, well, we're always discounted or, oh, it's hyperbole or they're exaggerating. I quote a U.S. merchant who was so disgusted, he went home and wrote an article about it in a paper that was not necessarily sympathetic to Haiti. He said, we can't even eat fish in the bay. I hate saying this. I tell my students all the time, I hate to tell them these things, but it is important to know. They complained about the stench, about the bloated bodies in the ocean. And, I quote in the book, Juste Chanlat, who was another one of Henri Christophe's principal secretaries and ministers. And he says, when you think about evil people like Leclerc, his successor, Rochambeau, and what they wanted to do, Napoleon, you think, okay, here's an evil person. But he said, but you know what I have trouble understanding? How they convinced 60,000 French soldiers to come over here and do this to us. He says, I have trouble understanding that. And so when people have said to me, well, do you think it's really genocidal? Yes, it is genocidal when people describe mass murder and killings, not just that they want to do, but they try to do. The fact that they don't succeed in doing it doesn't make it any less genocidal. And I quote Haitians throughout the book because I want people to understand their pain. Wahun Tonnerre, Dessalines' principal secretary and also an adjutant general himself, said, do you know what it was like? The screams, hearing people, like, how are we going to ever forget this? And Belen Devate came along and said, we're not going to forget. To all our children who didn't live through this, we're going to write down this history because they must never, ever forget. And I believe that. We cannot forget. These were human beings and they were treated in a monstrous way. That is the only way to describe it. They were treated in this monstrous way. And as much as it pains us to revisit that history, it is so important to know that the Holocaust is not the only time that people engaged in such monstrous behavior. We could also speak of other moments in Haitian history, the 1937 massacre along the border of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, because when we forget this history, silencing the past allows it to be repeated. This is what the Martinican poet and philosopher and playwright Aimé Césaire told us in his famous discourse on colonialism. The minute that Columbus and Cortez and all of these genocidal explorers were allowed to kill people en masse, that is what enabled Europeans to turn that mass murder onto themselves for the Holocaust. He drew a straight line. Wow. And so when we forget and we want to make it all beautiful and nice Thanksgiving, that is what allows it to happen again.
Let me press that a little bit, you know, segueing back to, teaching, Haitian history to the masses, young masses. I start by playing rock, paper, scissors. And they're wondering, what does that have to do with Haitian history? And then, well, the other name for rock, paper, scissors is Rochambeau. And then I said, well, I use that as a segue to talk about Rochambeau. And there is this kind of Rochambeau versus Dessalines, his cruelty and Dessalines being able to say, okay, I can match that energy, right? And able to go toe-to-toe in defeat. But along those lines, and this is something I really appreciate about your work, there is a caricature of Dessalines and the Haitian revolutionaries as these extremely, awful people. And part of the reason I ask about you describing these atrocities is it gives perspective, right? And what we had to overcome, and still being able to balance rebuilding a nation and still fighting for the nation at the same time. So Rochambeau is like and Dessalines are these kind of rivals. Dessalines like, I match that energy. I could anything you can do, I can do better, kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then they kind of talk about, in your book, you kind of break down, and I love this perspective. In theology, we have a term, we talk about theology from below and theology from above. I see that you do that in your work, history from above and history from below. And so we often hear the history, from above. And it is told, and they use some facts, but then they always kind of insert something in there to diminish the accomplishments of Haiti. And that was what I was coming across, why your work was so refreshing. You just kind of like stated the facts. You stated the facts, whatever they were. So you have this legend of Dessalines, who did this massacre of the whites and using that reputation to isolate Haiti. That's what the other nations did. But then you point out some very powerful things like, okay, I'm not saying it didn't happen at all, but then if it's a complete massacre of the whites, then why is there census data that's still existing that counts the white people who are there? And what I love about your work is your not just ability, but your willingness to go like 3-4 steps deep to be able to say, here is what you heard, but you probably heard it because it came from this source. But you know what? This source came from this source that came from this source. So one of the things I appreciate, I feel like after I read your work, I can actually be in a setting where if I hear a rumor, I can say, well, you know what? That's probably because it came from that source. But here are the facts and the more credible documents.
That's right.
So tell us about how sometimes the Haitian revolutionaries are intentionally demonized and what we can do to get a more accurate picture of who they are and their contributions.
Well, thank you so much for recognizing the kind of source work involved, because it was so interesting. I can a lot of times tell where someone's head is at with the Haitian Revolution by the criticisms that they give me about the first and last king of Haiti. They're like, why can't you just tell the story? I don't care who said it. And it's like, because in the context of Haiti, we have to know where those stories came from. We have to know who said it and why. And Haitians have been so demonized that to me, it's so unfair to read in history books, even in contemporary books, that then just repeat what one person said. I was reading about Christophe, obviously, in all these sources, and some people would just say, oh yeah, Christophe wanted to sell the colony to the English. I thought, what? And then I look and see what's their source. I'm like, oh, well, that's, again, as you were saying, that's because you read that source. But in their turn, all of the revolutionaries were demonized in some way. You know, it is hard to describe the propaganda machine that was France at the time. Right after Toussaint Louverture's death, they're getting so much criticism that Napoleon directs a man named Louis Dubroca, who's like this main propagandist, to write a biography, in quotation marks, of Toussaint Louverture to defame him. Because here you have the British over here painting him like a martyr, loving nothing more than to say, look how terrible the French are. They even killed Toussaint Louverture. William Wordsworth has written that famous poem where we get the phrase, the common wind, that Julius Scott used in his famous book, The Common Wind, to talk about how the revolution would spread. Dubroca also wrote a biography of Dessalines, in which the most famous image of Dessalines that there is him holding up a white woman's head. Right? So this is the idea. Christophe is caricatured all over the place. I mean, the man cannot escape caricature if he tried. And I think that these narratives, they seem like they wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with today. But when you think about how Haitian leaders are described today, it is often in extremely hyperbolic terms. Suluk, for example, all of our leaders up through the 20th century. And then you'll have newspapers who, when they get to Duvalier, which is often their gotcha moment for us, like, I finally gotcha, Duvalier, they tie a straight line to Toussaint. You know, in the Christophe book, I talk about an article from way back in the day in the Miami Herald, way before Jacqueline Charles got there, that ties Duvalier to Christophe and to Suluk. Like, hello, there's a lot of things that happen in between there. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons why I think paying attention to the heads of state, along with, we need so many more stories about Haitian history. We need to know about what women were doing in the revolution. We need women's histories of the island in general. We need more attention to everyday life on the ground in Haiti under slavery. We know a lot about what the revolutionaries were doing. We know a lot about what the white French colonists wrote about the plantations, but we need more attention to people's lives. That's how you get away from demonization. That's how the portrait of a single man doesn't come in to stand as the story of an entire nation, is having more, not less, of this history.
Sanité Belair. Yes.
Sanité Belair, yep.
Exactly.
One of my prized possessions is like the centennial dollar with on it.
And Marie-Jeanne Lamartinière and all of them, you know.
I want to, because I know that your time is precious. I just kind of want to segue something really, because this is where it connects me. This is how we got together, honestly. I'm on a plane, you know, I pay for the Wi-Fi on the way back from Mexico with my husband on a much needed vacation. And I'm like scrolling through Facebook and I see this person. This is where I see for the first time. I say, Henri Christophe. I said, oh, Henri Christophe. I click and I look at an interview you were doing, I think in North Carolina, right? And then all of a sudden you mention Savannah. I said, wait a minute. I said, no. She goes, there's actually a monument there. I was like, oh my gosh, she's mentioning them. I almost fell out of my seat in the plane, right? My poor husband's resting and I want to nudge him so bad to say, look what's happening. And so my father was the organizer for the Haitian monument in Savannah. I remember, and in your book, I see the picture of the monument. I'm just like so amazed at everything that's going on, you know, in my head right now. And so I look, I see the monument, I see you mention it, I read about you explaining the imagery in the monument. So if you haven't seen the monument, it has, you know, these soldiers and their attire is specific, and I'll explain why. And then there's the drummer boy, and you're always so kind, you know, and representing Henri Christophe, and you give a reason why he is represented that way. It's because you had to be at least 12 years old, which is around the age that he was at that time, in order to be a drummer boy. Then you put all these little details together, and you do it in such a way that, okay, I'm giving you the facts, and then you can draw your conclusions. Okay, he does get shot, right? They're likely digging trenches, but he does get shot. And then you talk about this work that you can't find. A historian says, you went look for it, but you couldn't find it. But it talked about how they were, the chasseurs volontaires were able to help the soldiers escape You tie that together with the fact that there was recognition given, not necessarily for you fighting as a soldier, but more so for you protecting French lives.
Mhm.
And then you said, okay, now put all these pieces together. So the way the monument looks now, let me tell you what happened. So my dad is dragging me. My dad starts the Haitian American Historical Society. I'm young. I'm like, why is he dragging me to these meetings? I mean, this is like so boring, kind of thing. I had no idea history is happening, before my eyes. He pulls together a coalition of historians and so forth. And so I'm in one of the meetings, and one of the first drafts of what the monument is supposed to look like comes out. And it is a tiered tower. And at each level, there are soldiers who are pointing their weapon. And at the very top of the tower is a huge sculpture, a huge image of Henri Christophe with a big drum. And it's like, so the discussion happens, okay, what do you guys think, right? And then the room gets, it's like, oh, this is interesting. Then the room gets kind of quiet. And finally, this husband and wife couple, well-to-do historians finally say, you know what? Henri Christophe was not necessarily my favorite, king. And all of a sudden, this silence comes across the room. And that's where your book was helpful, recognizing there were all of these stories, about him. Then another historian says, well, if we're honest, the clothes on these soldiers on these tiered tower are more clothing that's from the Civil War than it is from the time of the Revolution. So all of this confession starts to come out, in the room. And so that tense moment of once they said he wasn't my favorite person, I'm like, well, what just happened? Everything just shifted, And then so they redo the image, and you have the monument as to what it looks like now. What your work also did for me was I had paid no attention to Rigaud as being one of the chasseurs volontaires. And to see these revolutionaries, you took the time to trace them from the Battle of Savannah to their roles during the revolution. You even tie when they win the revolution to where Henri Christophe is standing versus where he started off his life. I mean, I'm sorry, it was just amazing. So I want to affirm and thank you. It took a lot out of my dad to get that done. It took a lot of work, working with the first African American mayor of Savannah, Georgia, Mayor Adams. And to see it now, can you imagine? I open a book from Professor at Yale, and my dad's there, because he's the image of one of the soldiers. I just want to thank you, because chapter 2 of the book, it uses that as an anchor point, to tell all of these different kind of stories. And so it is amazing to meet you. There it is. Oh my gosh, yes. So that's my dad on one knee pointing. That's his image that they use. And then you explain, the drummer board, why it looks that way, and then you use that to kind of talk about where we where they went from there. So I'm baffled. This is a big moment for me. And I don't know if you were there in person to see the monument, and can you tell us a little bit about the Chasseurs Volontaires de Saint-Domingue?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I did have the opportunity to see the monument. I call it my experiential research. I went to Tybee Island, where the Chasseurs Volontaires, who are this core, this body of free men of color from Saint-Domingue, principally in this one. Not all of them elsewhere were from Saint-Domingue, but this one, they're from Saint-Domingue, and it, yes, includes Henri Christophe and André Rigaud and Vincent Auger and Jean-Baptiste Chavannes. These are famous freedom fighters, martyrs, people who lost their lives fighting for freedom once they're back in the colony. And I go to Tybee Island because I'm trying to understand, why can't they land this ship? So the French are coming, they have this corps, they're coming to aid the American patriots, as they called themselves, in their battle against the British. And they go to Savannah, and they have all of these problems on the way there. Their equipment is breaking down, they don't have food. Then when they get there, I needed to understand the tides. And so then when you see Tybee Island and how it connects to Savannah, they've got to wait. They can't go when it's too low, because the ship's going to get stuck, right? They can't take a ship that close to the land. And so you see all of the kind of problems that they were up against. And these chasseurs volontaires, I talk about in the book what Christophe saw, because before I knew a lot about this particular battle, the Battle of Savannah, which took place on October 9th, 1779, I was thinking, oh yeah, they fought in this, heroic battle, but the French lose this battle in a disastrous way, and people die, and the general who's in charge of it is shot several times. And so I'm thinking about Christophe, who just turned 12 3 days before this battle.
Yeah.
And what he saw, and he's far away from his family. He's got nobody potentially to protect him except these French soldiers. And then they get back on the ship and they're all wounded. And life at sea was insane, and insanely dangerous, right? And for him to have survived all of that, I wanted to make that a part of the book, not a side note, because I understand it's so tempting to just say that he fought there and leave the reader to move on from that. But I wanted people to understand what it would have been like, because I do think that it had to have informed his later actions, what he saw there, and that he knew that war was not something that you play around with, that war was deadly. It wasn't a game for him. And we watch him in his early life. He really cares about people. And later in his life, so many things happened to him. I think he became hardened and jaded and cynical. And I hope that doesn't happen to any of us in our old age. But I can see what a hard life he had. And I just wanted people to remember that it's totally fine to have our ideas about what he did later in his life, but to remember this was once a child, and it was pretty traumatic, the things that he went through as a child.
Yeah, I think you also mentioned, I think that's the last part I say about it, how in that battle, when the ceasefire was requested, how that became detrimental. And perhaps that was in his mind during the Revolutionary War, when that same request was made. And he's like, oh, no.
I've been here before. Yeah, we don't do that.
I remember how that went before. We're not going to do that. But incredible. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad it's not just a small passing point. It is a main point, because it matters, to see how that impacts who he is. We are a result of our experiences. And so it is amazing to go to see this in person. And I do think having the awareness is huge, and it's major to know the contributions. So you see that what is our Haitian connections to the United States, but also how does this experience, like you said, impact Haiti's first and last king? Got another quick question about a Haitian connection to the U.S., and then we'll get ready to go to our wrap-up questions as we wrap this amazing discussion up. So I guess the next question, before we go to our final close, would be, what also is a connection between Haiti and the Louisiana Purchase, if at all? And then we'll go to our final reflections.
Oh yeah, it's a huge connection. The Louisiana Purchase literally would not have happened without the Haitian Revolution. So Napoleon Bonaparte in 1803, he knows that he is about to lose the colony. The writing is on the wall. The war has changed from being about preventing the reinstatement of slavery. It's now overtly a war of independence. Dessalines, Christ, they've rallied, Pétion, even though they become enemies later, they're all together in this moment. They form the Armée Indigène. And Napoleon starts engaging in conversation with Thomas Jefferson, president of the United States at the time, about the sale of the Louisiana Territory to the United States, which is going to double the size of the United States. So this is a hugely valuable piece of land. And to quote W.E.B. Du Bois, the great W.E.B. Du Bois, Jefferson was able to purchase this huge swath of land for a song, for the price of a song. Just to give you a sense of, this is $15 million US. The amount that Haiti had to pay France for the indemnity was 150 million francs. Now, 15 million US in francs was 80 million francs. Wow. And so almost twice for a territory that is the size of Massachusetts in the case of Haiti. So I just wanted that comparison to see the weight and consequences of this decision, which reshapes the entire United States, everything about its destiny.
You're right. It doubles the size of this nation overnight. and with with this manifest destiny concept that they believed in, literally go coast to coast. And just to piggyback on that, the Mississippi River is huge. Okay, so when you think about the French cities alone, like New Orleans and St. Louis going up, people don't realize like Louisiana after King Louis, right? Or St. Louis, St. Louis. This is gold to the French, mainly because of the Mississippi River. And there are the tributaries and rivers in the United States that go to the Mississippi River today. If you were to go on Google and type in and say, what are the Mississippi River river basin, you can get almost from the northeast down to New Orleans through rivers. This river connects to that river, to that river, to that river, to that river. And in that society, rivers were your water were your highway. So it made the U.S. a powerful nation because all the agriculture, farmers can put their goods on a boat, put it in that little river. That river would connect to the Mississippi River. And from there, go to the mouth towards New Orleans and out to the rest of the world. Literally, you're right. Haiti doubles the size of the U.S., but they also double their economic output because the Mississippi River is the key to the nation. Again, because we're living in a world today with highways and buses and planes and trains, we're not thinking about it, but it's so true. Like even here in New York, when the Erie Canal was not really in use anymore, there were cities in New York that went down because of it. Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo declined because the Erie Canal is not in use. We're using interstate highways. But if people can think, when Haiti forced Napoleon's hand, the economic output of the U.S. doubled. I mean, the U.S. owes Haiti 1 million thank yous for the point that you made about this Louisiana purchase.
And millions of dollars.
Yeah, more than a thank yous, yes.
In 1914, the United States impounded $500,000 in gold stores for the National Bank of Haiti.
That's correct.
And they never gave it back.
Ever.
So I don't know. I'm not an economist to adjust for inflation and interest, but I'm guessing it's in the high millions.
I think it's cool. I think as we're wrapping up, and it's certain things I wanted at least people to kind of walk away with was your perception of Haiti and Haiti. Being a Haitian American growing up in the United States, all you hear is the propaganda. Yeah. But you are a credible testimony of the facts about our history and our culture. You add to our pride. And I certainly want to thank you for that. So not only I kind of wanted at least people to understand that, hey, it took a lot, not just, it took, you have to have some acumen in order for the revolution. So we're just not, some freak accident, and we won. No, it was not a freak accident. These were brilliant men and women, that used strategy as well. Also that, hey, it wasn't just one nation. It was 3 world powers. And the last thing I want people to remember is, I know there's a common association of Haiti and poverty, but it was like the richest colony in the world, and for its production of sugar and coffee. And I think from your book, I really, indigo, did you mention indigo as well? And that was new for me. That part I wasn't aware of. And so just to kind of say, hey, don't let the world define you. We have our own history, and thank you for contributing to that. And I just want to say thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. I mean, what you're doing is big. It's a domino effect. And for those tuning in now, this information is a great source, and we're going to give you a chance to share as we wrap it up. We can just, people can know where to start, what to do next. As some of you might know, I do teach in the New York City public school system. So we are using your content. We will be using it going forward. We usually get to the unit about the Haitian Revolution around November. So it's going to be exciting November this year. And we take our time. We don't rush. It's not a one-day thing. We spend a couple of weeks and we intertwine other Latin American revolutions. So this is an amazing source that we're looking forward to use. We're really grateful. So young Haitian American kids will be learning in their curriculum. But just as we get ready to, wrap this up, just to close this out, for young Haitian Americans who want to learn more, where should they start? And how can understanding the revolution, how can it shape the way we view ourselves? And in the close, where can listeners purchase your book or access more of your work? So I know I said a lot, but I guess really the two things to emphasize are for young Haitian Americans who want to learn more and might feel overwhelmed and they enjoyed this conversation, but maybe there's terms and names they don't know. Where should they start? And then again, where can listeners purchase your book or access more of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if people are starting out, I would think they might actually have a look at The First and Last King of Haiti, because I do explain the revolution. But there's also a great new book out by one of my dear friends, Julia Gaffield, called I Have Avenged America, Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Haiti's Fight for Freedom. And so I would say dive right into the story, because it is worth it. It will be worth getting all of those names and people in your brain, so that when you're having conversations with your friends, you have the facts and the receipts to boot. And where they can find more of my work. So all my books are sold on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and your independent bookstores, which I love. Also bookshop.org, they support independent bookstores. But I have a lot of teaching resources and free materials on my website as well. So marlenedaut.com or kingofhaiti.com. They both point to the same place. If you click on the teaching resources tab, I have videos, podcasts, assignments for teachers, readings for teachers and readings for students, and advice about how to teach and structure a lesson that includes art and literature. And I also have a blog there where I'm just talking about a lot of different things that have helped bring me on this journey, and I hope will be inspiring for other people. I talk about some of the obstacles that I faced as well. It's easy to think when you see somebody published and you see them succeeding, whatever that means to different people, that it was always easy. So I always think that it's important to talk about the struggles. Focusing and writing about Haiti, you can face a lot of doubts. And conversations like this one and the work that you're all doing and hearing that it is helping and inspiring people just helps me to know that I can keep going forward and that there are people out there who want this history. And I am happy to engage in conversations with anyone about it.
You'll see.
I want you to know my husband has stolen my hard copy of your book. I was just like, what? I was like, what? I gifted Jonathan a hard copy. I have it all. I have the electronic copy, I have the hard copy, I have the audio. So, but my husband has taken my hard copy. So
it's actually amazing, and it's something that really I think, yeah, it definitely makes a difference. Just to know that in a hard copy. So when she bought it for me, I mean, I jumped into it right away. And even hearing things about the Windward Islands and all those other things, it really, really definitely made an amazing impact. And just small information that you take it and you're nothing that you run by, that there's no rushing. You take your time. And as you take your time, there's so much to just really pull out and understand. So we're really grateful for that. And I think it's a great start, a great place to start. And then I'm hoping that going forward, we can really make progress and encourage young people to be proud of who they are and know their history.
Okay, shout out to the Franco-Haitian Federation and to the Northeastern Conference. I hope you'll enjoy reading the book. I hope you read the book. If you do, I hope you enjoy it. And thank you so much for all that you do in the world, and happy reading, and that's it.
Great book, powerful work, inspiring. I left inspired. Thank you for making yourself available to us. I think you're an amazing person, so down to earth, easy to talk to, and very approachable. And I think you've produced something that has been quite a contribution to our history and our self-understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to meet you both.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daut. appreciate you so much. Thank you, Dr. Olivier, for helping put this together. And all of you who are watching in this podcast, thank you for joining us. Feel free to share, like, let your friends know, send the link. This is just scratching the surface, and there's so much more to go. You saw the reference to the books. We're excited for the journey you'll be going on as you learn more about this beautiful history. Thank you so much. Have a great time. Enjoy your day, your week. Blessings, and we can't wait to circle back. Take care.